For centuries, millions of people from across the globe have come to the United States seeking the opportunity for a better life. America is a country that was built by immigrants, some who brought their talent and others who found themselves while pursuing their dreams in a new land. Here is one story about the life of a modern-day immigrant.
Hi, my name is Sonny Solomon. I was born in India, in Himachal, and I came to US in 1996, and this is my immigrant story. I remember my early childhood growing up in a village in Punjab called Jamalpur, and my mother was a nurse, so she was transferred there, and then we used to live. I lived in a village for about, I would say, 3 years. I remember the days when I was little. We had a big garden in the middle of the campus. It was actually a nursing home for the villagers, so all the accommodation was provided by the hospital, and we used to live in the campus. At night, my mother used to get calls from all the villagers, whoever was pregnant, so she will, in the middle of the night, she will go and deliver the babies. My father will accompany her to whoever's house the delivery was happening. It was fun living in village because the air was pure, food was good, people were nice, and I also remember taking my neighbor's cows to a nearby pond. I would sit on the back of a cow or a buffalo, and they'll just go in the pond. I was a little kid sitting on their back and just chilling in the muddy water, and well, that was definitely dirty water, but it was fun for me as a kid. I remember going to the fields to get fresh vegetables. And everybody knew my mother was a nurse, so nobody will ever charge us any money. They will actually give us more than we required. And people were very generous back then. Everybody took care of everybody. We never had any problem with food or milk. We always had butter, ghee, eggs. Everything was always given by the neighbors. You know, they used to respect my mom a lot because, you know, they could call her in the middle of the night and she will just get up and walk to anybody's house just to treat them, whatever needs to be done with the patient. And in those days, one of my uncles from US, he came to visit us in India, and he stayed with us for a couple of days. And I remember him giving me a plastic keyring with a picture of Empire State Building on it. And when I first looked at the Empire State Building, I fell in love with Empire State Building. And I knew from very early on in my life, maybe I was 4 or 5 years old, I knew about New York City and I knew about Empire State Building. And I guess that was the time when the dream was born in my head to come to US. We had a big tree in one of the in the campus, and it used to be a neem tree. So neem is a medicinal plant, and you know, people use branches to brush their teeth. They'll make some medicine with neem leaves to apply on the wounds. Some people just boil the neem leaves and drink water just to purify the blood. And I used to sit under that tree and I used to think that sky exists till America. And in my head, I used to look up at the sky and I used to think, oh, if I go to America, that's the limit. That sky ends there. And a little kid didn't know any better. And every time I used to see a plane passing by, I used to think that every plane goes to America. I didn't know anything about any other country, but all I knew was America, that every flight was going above me is going to America. Well, anyways, then I started asking my father. I remember asking him questions about New York, about USA. And my father used to tell me, yeah, one day when you grow up, you're going to go there too, because your uncles have filed the paperwork and they're going to call everybody. And I used to be very excited about it. And in my head, I used to think every day, oh, maybe next year I'm going to go to US. Well, it didn't happen that way. So it was fun. I used to go to school in the village, and I remember we had only one room in our school in the village because everybody used to sit outside. The only time everybody will go in that room is when it's raining. And most of the time when it used to rain, our schools were off. So they will just send us home. And we had a wooden board where it's an old school board where you write with a pen dipped in ink, and then that was one side of the board, and then you turn it over and you write on the other side. I remember it, and it used to be fun. That's how I started learned my ABCD, 1, 2, 3s, and Punjabi words and Hindi words. Our school was a very simple school. We would all sit under a tree, and our teachers would basically have one board there, a blackboard we used to call it, and they will write on it, and we'll just copy whatever was written on the board. I used to walk to school. It was not far, maybe 10, 15 minutes walk. We had few kids, not too many. I would say about 25, 30 kids in that school, everybody from that village. And that 30 kids were basically, half was younger and the other half was older kids. Everybody, the younger kids will go to one class and the older kids will go to the other class. There was no first, second, third, fourth, fifth grade. Living there, going to school there, it was a lot of fun. And then as I got older, after I believe 2 years or 1.5 years later, I was transferred to a school in the city. And my father had a bicycle then, and he used to drop me to school every day. It used to take us about 40 minutes, 45 minutes, and I will sit behind the bicycle on a carriage, and he will just ride, and we'll just talk about things, and he will tell me stories while going to the school. He'll drop me off, and then he used to come and pick me up after my school. I didn't realize for a very long time that me sitting on the back of the cycle and riding for about 40 minutes is a lot of work. I realized this later on in my life when I used to carry my friends just for fun. So it was a fun time. I wished we had a bike or a scooter so my father can drop me off. But we didn't have that sort of money at that time to afford a bike or a scooter. And school was fun. It was a big school. I liked it. And while we were going to schools, I got into sports, got into drama. I used to be in my school choir. We did a lot of fun activities. After 3 years, my mother was transferred back to the city, and then we moved to one-bedroom apartment. Well, when I say one-bedroom apartment, it's basically one room. And maybe about 400 square feet. We had 2 beds, I still remember, on each side of the wall. And at night, we'll put another bed in the middle of the room, and there'll be no walking space. And all this time, I used to make plans, or when I go to America, I'm going to build a house, so my mom, dad, my brother, they can live in a nicer place. The place was nice. We had a lot of kids in our campus. Again, we lived in a campus, hospital campus. So we always had a lot of kids to play with, to go to school with. Neighbors, everybody will take care of everybody. They were all part of the hospital, working in different jobs. At any given time, I would say if we wanted to go out and play, we had about 30, 40 kids. Everybody, depending on the age group, hanging out together, playing cricket or soccer or field hockey, badminton. So it was a lot of fun. We didn't think about money back then. Times were tough because a nurse could make only so much money back then. My father worked in a hospital also. So we were living a comfortable life. Once or twice a year we would get new clothes, and that was for Christmas or Easter, and it was a lot of fun for us. We used to wait for Christmas, and we knew our parents was gonna buy us new clothes, new shoes, and we would get excited. And all these things were handmade. We used to go to a tailor, he will measure us, then he will make it for us, and we'll be excited. We used to wear the same clothes, the new clothes. Every time we'll go out, I'll wear the same new clothes because it made me happy. Later on in life, when I was, I believe, in 4th grade, I was transferred to a new school, which was a Shamrock School. And the principal there was from Australia. And that was a Montessori school. And the only reason we could afford it is because my mother was a nurse and it was a Christian school. So they gave us a good discount. And I went in and I studied there for 2 years. And I think those 2 years are the most important years of my growing up. What I learned in those 2 years had impacted my life in a very positive way. And my principal, Mrs. Margaret Nidger, who's no more, but I'm very thankful to her that I got a chance to meet a person like her in my life. She changed my life. After my 6th grade, I was transferred back to a different school because it was closer to my house. And they had more grades. It was still high school, so I started going to St. Thomas School. And I was a good student. I was always in top 10, but I was also very much involved in every other curricular activities at my school: singing, dancing, drama, sports. All my schoolmates, all my classmates, all of them were my friends. We had a good time growing up. After finishing my school, I went to Cyprus to do hotel management. And after doing 2 years of hotel management, I realized, and I was working at the restaurant also at that time, I realized I like restaurant much better than working in a hotel. And my first job outside of India, or a first job ever to make money, was a dishwashing job. So I was a dishwasher at a Greek place on a Greek island, and I was very happy about it, that I'm able to finally gonna make my own money. I called my father and I told him, Dad, I got a job. I told him this is what I'm doing, and he said, I'm very proud of you. I lived in Cyprus for about 2 years, and after Cyprus, since my family was living in the U.S., I came to U.S. in 1996, and I started living here. And then, since I knew the restaurant work, in U.S. my first job was in Chicago, because I went to Chicago, and I worked in a sandwich shop, Subway sandwich shop. That was my first job in U.S. for about 2 weeks, or about 2 months, 2 or 3 months. And doing that job was the only reason I did that job was to make enough money to come to New York City. So I saved my money, bought a ticket. I believe in September of '96, I moved to New York City. Not to New York City, but to Long Island to stay at my aunt's house. And I was there for about a month, and then finally the day, there used to be a newspaper called India Abroad back then. And I used to look for jobs in that section. Maybe I'll be able to find a job. And then finally I found a job in Indian restaurant. It used to be called Mughal Palace. And the day I was hired was right a day before Thanksgiving Day. So my first job in New York, in US, was on Thanksgiving Day. There was a private party going on where I had to work as a bartender. And I knew how to make drinks, but at that time I was not familiar with limes. And that was the first day on Thanksgiving Day. Somebody told me the green are the limes, and I knew about the lemons, but we didn't have limes back then in India. So that was the day I learned what limes are all about. I worked in that restaurant for about a month, and while I was working at Mughal Palace, a chef and a few other guys came and they saw me working there, and they asked me if I wanted to move to New Jersey, and they said they're going to give me, I believe, $200 a week, free accommodation. And I was excited. I'm like, okay, finally I can live by myself. And they said they'll come pick me up on Christmas Day. So that was my first Christmas. My mother was here then, and we have a big family here, and everybody was together in Long Island. But I had to leave my first Christmas, and my mother started crying. I'm like, Mom, next year I will spend Christmas with you. Let me just go, because they want me. I got a job. I can live by myself. So anyway, I left on Christmas Day, and I stayed in New Jersey for about 2 years. And I worked for them. It was fun. I learned a lot of things. And from New Jersey, Morristown, I moved to Lawrenceville, New Jersey, where there was another restaurant, Passage to India. And while I was working at Morristown, it used to be called Chand Palace. It's not there anymore. I became friends with the chef from Chand Palace, and I always asked him, I said, Chef, teach me how to cook. I knew how to cook, but I wanted to learn how to cook in a restaurant. I wanted to learn how the menu we had, he was making it. And he was the first person in my life who told me, you don't belong in the kitchen, you belong on the floor. And he always discouraged me from going into the kitchen. And one day he said, there's another restaurant opening up. I'll be the chef there, and come with me. I said, okay. So we went to Passage to India. Again, I worked on the floor. And Mondays, I used to go with my owners to Philadelphia Food Market to buy grocery for the entire week for the restaurant. They used to pay me a little extra, and it was fun for me, doing something different than working in a restaurant. And I also used to work in the kitchen one day a week because I wanted to know everything in the restaurant industry. And then finally, after a few years, I decided it's time to come to New York City. And back then, there used to be a restaurant called Dawat. It was one of the best Indian restaurants in New York City. And I moved there. And I started working in the kitchen as a food runner. And they were a busy restaurant back then. We were doing about 200 covers a night. I was in the kitchen running food, and one day my owner made me a kitchen supervisor where I will have to cook certain things, make sure that we have everything available in the kitchen, and I was expediting and packing deliveries and basically running the whole kitchen. When I got tired of the kitchen, I told my owner I need to come out on the floor. He said, whenever you want, I'll put you on the floor. In that restaurant, after being a kitchen supervisor, I knew about the food, menu, and everything, but I didn't know about the service. So then he put me on the floor as a back waiter, and I started helping my captains. After 2 or 3 months, I was promoted to be a captain at my place. After 7 months, I was basically running the show in my restaurant, working closely with the maitre d' and my manager. It was a good experience. And then finally, I'm like, enough of Indian food, and I wanted to try some different cuisines. And then I applied for a job in the afternoon, I used to go and apply for jobs, just whoever is hiring. And luckily, I got a chance to go meet human resources manager, Christopher Malm. He was the human resources manager for Gustavino's. And when he called me in, I thought I'll be going to the restaurant, but instead it was some building. There was some office in a building. So I went there, I had my tuxedo on, and he asked me if I wanted to be a captain. And at that time, I asked him what kind of food do they serve. And he said it'll be a French food. And I told him I want to be a back waiter because I don't know anything about French food. And he told me, you look good in tuxedos, we'll teach you everything. I said, I still want to learn everything from the bottom. Because if I make a mistake as a back waiter, you won't fire me. But if I make a mistake as a waiter, I'll be fired right away. He liked my answer and he said, sure. He hired me, and the next day he said, come, I'll take you to the restaurant. And when he took me to Gustavino's and he opened the door, I was in shock. This place was $27 million restaurant. They had 2 floors. The bottom floor was brasserie, and the top floor was fine dining club. And he offered me a position as a back waiter in fine dining club. And that's where I met my another captain, Gil Daniel. And Gil was the one who taught me about service for fine dining, which I had never done before in my life. So Gil was my coach, and I would be his back waiter for about 2 months. All our managers knew that Gil and Sonny, they want to work together, and we worked together, and I learned. And after, I would say, a month and a half, 2 months, my GM approached me and said, Sonny, I think you should be a captain now. And Gil said he didn't want to work with anybody else except me, so we ended up both working with each other, getting the same amount of money. And it was fun. And I used to work 5 days there. 2 days, I started buying books about wines, about different styles of service, French food, and I used to self-educate myself. And when I started reading about wines and foods, I fell in love with this business. And the culture of Gustavino's, I think, is that motivated me to do Indian restaurant, to own an Indian restaurant with a different style, with proper service and proper food, proper wine. And that's how to open my own restaurant dream came about. While working at Gustavino's, I will hang out with, or I would rather say I will watch the chefs when they were cooking. And I was very impressed the way he used to do things, presentation, cooking methods. And Daniel Orr was the chef there. And I fell in love with the whole restaurant scene. We had some high-profile guests who used to come there. We did a lot of Hollywood parties. We had a lot of movie stars that would come there. It looked like a party every night. It was fun. And then from there, I applied for a job at 1CPS, which was inside the Plaza Hotel. And Plaza Hotel, as everybody knows, is a landmark in New York City. So I got a chance to work there, and then I started working there for David Burke. I used to manage and handle chef's table, and I had a great schedule, 12 to 8, Monday through Friday. It was fun, good money, and a very good schedule for a restaurant. 12 to 8 is basically, sometimes I'll be cut off at 5 o'clock because there's nobody reserved the chef's table. And then I used to go to new places, whatever opens up in New York City, and I would go and check different food, different layouts of the restaurant, different concepts, and it was fun for me. Because in the back of my head, I knew I'm going to open up a restaurant someday. And I used to go and look for designs, how people work in those restaurants, and that always excited me. Later on in life, I got a chance to work with John George. I worked at Mercer Kitchen, 66, Spice Market, and loved it, loved his style of work, loved the culture of the work, the whole management team. Everybody was very professional. And for me, when somebody asked me, did I ever go to school in US or in New York, I always say I went to the best school, and that's New York City. Because New York City can teach you things which nobody can teach you at school or in your family. And what you learn from New York City cannot be taught anywhere else. And my mentors, like John George, when I saw him, he's always sharply dressed, very professional, come say hello to everybody, take care of his staff and all the people he works with. Really, really cool guy. I also worked for one of the biggest cheese restaurants in New York City at that time, Artisanal. We had about 250 cheeses, and like I said, I always used to go and visit places. And I liked the concept. I'm like, okay, it's time for me to learn about cheese. So I worked there, maybe 2 years I worked there. Learned about the cheeses and wine pairing with the cheese, the fruit pairing, tried almost all the cheeses they had. Loved it. And the chef name was Terrence Brennan at that restaurant, Artisanal. And that's where I met Dwayne Collins and Mark Shea. They played a big role in my life also. Mark Shea was the GM of Artisanal, and very well experienced in restaurant. I asked him, and he told me he's been doing this since he was a teenager. He has always worked in restaurant. And I will always have questions about business, restaurant business, rather than asking how everything needs to be done in the restaurant. I was always curious to learn the financial side of the restaurant, how to run the restaurant. And he was a great mentor, and we are still in touch. He's retired, moved to Portugal, but whenever he comes to New York City, he comes and visits me. Then I met one of the best service managers, Dwayne Collin. He was a GM for Aquavit when they first opened up. He was a service manager, I believe. And what I heard about him was, if Dwayne Collins applied for a job, you hire him. And the service techniques, the logic behind service, the logic about how to run the floor, it was all I learned was from Dwayne Collins. And again, we are still in touch. He's a friend of mine. Also semi-retired, doesn't live in New York City anymore. But these are my mentors, my great teachers in New York City. And finally, in 2004, I got a chance with the Indian chef Hemant Mathur, to open a restaurant, Devi. And once we had a meeting about the opening, he told me what he's planning to do, and that's where we combined East and West cultures in a dining scene. We were the first Indian restaurant at that time doing tasting menu, a proper French style in courses. We had the wine pairings there. We were the first Indians to get a Michelin star in North America at that time. And in 2005, we were the best Indian restaurant, top 50 restaurants in New York City. We were one of them. And I was there till 2008. And after that, I left. I worked for a steakhouse, Capitol Grill. I decided I want to do something else on the side, so I was doing it. It didn't work out. I went back in the restaurant business again. And 2010, I opened another place with Hemant Tulsi, which was also in New York City. And I was with him till about 2015. In 2015, I decided to open up my own place in Astoria, Queens, Curry Culture. And in Curry Culture, we were the best Indian restaurant 5 years in a row in Queens. And during pandemic, we had to shut down the place. It was a beautiful, huge place. And then I decided to go to East Village and open up something for takeout delivery and a casual place. So I ended up opening Veera the Dhaba, which is on 13th Street, 1st Avenue, with Chef Hemant Mathur. And we survived the pandemic. And it's the first dhaba, pure Punjabi run dhaba in New York City. And the chef there, Sonny, he's also from Punjab. So we picked the dishes that we used to eat growing up there. And it's still going, it's doing good business. It's still on 14th Street. And then after a few years, I decided with Hemant, let's open up a new place. And then we ended up opening V-Rays, which is where I'm sitting right now. And as you can see, this is more upscale Indian dining. And like people always call fine dining restaurant, I call this place fun dining restaurant. The concept of this place is it's a speakeasy, the first Indian speakeasy opened by Indian. And the speakeasies is basically a concept from 1920s during Prohibition era when alcohol was banned in US. So all the mobsters and wise guy, they decided to open up speakeasies because they were the only one who were doing bootleggers who were supplying illegal alcohol at that time. And they had about 100,000 speakeasies that opened up in New York City that back then in 13 years. And when I saw this space, there was no windows, nothing, and then I got the idea, okay, this can be a nice, Indian speakeasy. It took me 11 months for the construction to be finished here. Everything you see in this place is all custom built. Lights are made by a gentleman from Spain. He flew here to do all the lights. The mirrors are all vintage mirrors from Italy. The marble on the right side of the restaurant, or right side of me, is from Brazil. The brass you see engraved in the mirrors, in the bar, in the bathroom, it's aged 100 years. It used to be a part of some sculpture in New York City. Our architect, Vincent Albrecht, she bought it and she used it wherever she wanted to use it. The food is all Indian from different regions of India. Our cocktails are named after all the gangsters or the bootleggers of 1920s. And it's a nice, cozy, fun vibe, very intimate dining. And people love our food and love our style here. And I would say after I built this space, I think the dream I took long years when I was a kid, years ago, that I wanted to come to New York City. And the day I came to New York City, I was going back to Queens on Queensboro Bridge, going home after shift, and I looked back to the city while going towards Queen, and I told myself someday I'm going to make myself successful in this city. And I think with this project, I'm getting there. This is the first one. I have plans to open more. But right now the focus is to get this thing up and going. And we recently opened up September 9th, 2024. Hopefully next year, some other city. Oh, sorry, I forgot to mention the address of my place. It's Vires 213 East 45th Street. Come visit me, and this is my immigrant story. Thank you for watching.